Rest in peace, Sid Haig. My family and I were fortunate to be able to meet Sid about a year and a half ago, and he was an awesome guy. Now, we've met a lot of great celebrities, but there are some standouts, and Sid was one of them. Some are nice enough and make small talk, but Sid actually hung out with us. He spent more than the required amount of time. We paid to take pictures with them and get some autographs, and I'd show you guys those photos, but I'm in them. But it went beyond that with Sid. After the pictures were taken, after he signed the autographs, he still stood around with us, talking, for close to 45 minutes. In fact, it almost seemed as if he was trying to just step back for a moment and enjoy himself. Just be down to earth and chat it up with regular people. Because, even though he was a horror icon, he was still a regular guy. And he came across that way. It was at a convention. I was there with my wife and son, and my mom even tagged along that day. She also loves House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, and she asked Sid if he would say one of her favorite lines, "Tutti fucking fruity," and he delivered. It's an experience we will never forget, and I was very sad to see the news. Rest in peace, Sid Haig. In honor of Sid's passing, my wife and I decided to rewatch House of a Thousand Corpses tonight. Regardless, we always watch this movie this time of year, because it is a Halloween movie. It takes place on Halloween Eve and on Halloween. We watch it every year, and every year I can't wait to watch it again. You want to know why? Because it is one of my all-time favorite horror films, and I actually consider it to be one of the greatest horror movies of all time, not just of the last 20 years. In fact, in my top 20 favorite horror movies of the last 20 years video, I ranked this at number 2. But after watching it again tonight, I've changed my mind. It's number 1. House of a Thousand Corpses is my favorite horror movie of the last 20 years. Hands down, it's not even close. This, in my opinion, is Rob Zombie's masterpiece. Now, I enjoy a lot of his horror films, much more than others seem to. And I know everyone seems to favor The Devil's Rejects, in most cases anyway, but this takes it for me. This is Rob's masterpiece. Now, before I go any further, let me say I know everyone is entitled to their own opinions. But since this is my video, you're gonna hear mine. It doesn't mean you have to agree. I'm not looking to argue with anyone in the comment section, but I definitely welcome discussion. That's why I'm posting this video. I'd love to know if you do agree with what I'm about to say, and if you disagree, I'd also love to know why. I remember there was a lot of hype around this film when it was first released. I never did get to see it in theaters, but I bought this DVD copy the day it came out. It was 100% a blind buy, and although I've had many of those, this was my favorite. I came home from my local FYE, which is no longer there. I had bought this DVD as well as a DVD copy of The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Sort of a coincidence, since Rob obviously borrowed heavily from that. I ended up watching The Texas Chainsaw Massacre first, with my girlfriend at the time. And then, later that night, I put in House of a Thousand Corpses and watched it by myself in the pitch black darkness. As you've probably surmised, I was completely blown away. I've said before that I consider The Sopranos to be the greatest series ever made, and you may have heard me say I wish I could go back and watch it again for the first time. If I could only go back and watch one TV series for the first time again, it would be The Sopranos. And I know this may sound like a bold statement, but you have to look at the context. As far as DVDs go and blind buys, if there was one movie I could go back and watch again for the first time, it would be House of a Thousand Corpses. From the incredible interactive DVD menu starring Sid Haig himself as Captain Spaulding, to the opening scene introducing Dr. Wolfenstein, I was hooked. And then, if that weren't enough to put me in the Halloween spirit, we have that great scene with Captain Spaulding at his chicken and gasoline station. Yes, fried chicken and gasoline. Captain Spaulding became a horror icon in those opening moments, and no one will ever change my mind on that. We are then introduced to the 4 protagonists, including Dwight Schrute and Chris Hardwick, and their girlfriends, driving down the road. And yes, I know Dwight Schrute's real name is Rainn Wilson, but I'm a huge fan of The Office too. They stop at Spaulding's place to fill up on gas and make a phone call. And that's when we get to see a really nice atmospheric Halloween shot of a neighborhood of trick-or-treaters. It's brief, but I'll be damned if that also doesn't get me in the Halloween spirit. This is when we find out it's actually Halloween Eve, the night before Halloween. But the kids in the neighborhood are trick-or-treating because Halloween falls on a school night. The two guys chat a bit with Captain Spaulding, and we find out they're writing a book about roadside attractions. Spaulding sells them tickets to his murder ride, which is basically a haunted attraction featuring real-life serial killers as wax figures and such. I love seeing haunted attractions in horror films, especially those set around Halloween. The ride ends with a display of Dr. Satan, which is supposedly a local legend in the area. The guys are very intrigued by this and decide to set out to find the tree where Dr. Satan was hanged. Yes, people, hanged is the proper usage of the word in this situation. Captain Spaulding draws them a map, and although the girlfriends are hesitant, they set out to the destination. This is where the obvious TCM inspiration comes into play. The group picks up a hitchhiker, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, who at this time was simply Sherry Moon. It's immediately clear that she's missing a few screws, but she's beautiful, so the guys don't really seem to notice. The girls, on the other hand, are a bit wary and a bit jealous, with good reason. Of course, they end up with a flat tire and stranded in the rainstorm. The hitchhiker, who simply goes by the name Baby Firefly, informs the group that her house is in walking distance. And if the group thought Baby was crazy, they haven't seen nothing yet. They enter what turns out to be a house of horrors, and a house of 1,000 corpses. I probably didn't need to give you this much of a synopsis. You've probably seen this movie. But I love it so much, so I enjoy talking about it. Now, obviously, there is a lot more that happens after this point, but I'll leave it at that. This, to me, is true horror. This is what a horror movie should be. It has everything. It definitely has a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe, but it actually has music in the movie, and colors. As a matter of fact, it's a very colorful movie. I really love the colors used in the film. There are also these random surreal clips sprinkled throughout the movie, which really make it claustrophobic and uncomfortable. It has a definite slasher element to it, zombies, monsters, everything you could want in a horror film. So my question is, why is it not more appreciated? Listen, I love The Devil's Rejects. It's a fantastic film, but it's a very different film, despite being a sequel to this. This one is shot differently, and beautifully, I might add. It plays out more like a horror film with the 4 young victims. There are more villains in this one, which I enjoy. I think Hugo is hilarious. The setting is better in my opinion. I love the house, and damn it, do I have to say it again? It takes place on Halloween. That right there is an added bonus. This one also has that deputy kill, which is amazingly shot. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. Like I said, I really do enjoy Rob Zombie's films, but this is where he peaked in my opinion. This is his masterpiece. I also feel that these are the best versions of the Firefly clan. I love Baby Firefly in this one. I love Otis. I love Captain Spaulding. Honestly, I love so much about this movie, I could go on and on and on. I know this was sort of a random rant, and I don't really know where I'm going with it. I just felt like discussing House of 1,000 Corpses. And I want to know why it's not more appreciated. Again, I remember this being really hyped up when it was first released. It seemed that everybody loved this movie. And then something happened. I don't know, really. It's as if The Devil's Rejects was released and everyone forgot about this one because they preferred The Devil's Rejects, which I don't quite understand, but everyone is entitled to their own opinions. This one to me is just pure horror. It's how a horror movie should be made, and I wish Rob Zombie would make more horror movies like this one. I feel like the over-the-top swearing wasn't present in this one. The over-the-top, hillbilly stereotypes, so to speak, were not in this one. This one was just made so well. So, what are your thoughts on House of 1,000 Corpses? And if you don't enjoy it that much, I definitely want to know why. as a horror fan, I just can't see how others don't enjoy this one as much as I do. I'm not trying to sound like an ecomaniac. Again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm just saying, like I've said multiple times in this video, it has everything a horror fan could want. So, what's the problem? I don't want to hear anything about the protagonists, not being likable or something like that, because there are so many classic horror films with unlikable protagonists. I don't want to hear that it's a knockoff of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because that was sort of the intention. It's more of an homage film than it is a ripoff. And when did we start separating movies into what we enjoy more or what we find more entertaining, and then this other category of what we consider to be better made films? I've heard a lot of people say they feel The Devil's Rejects is a better made film. I also disagree with that and feel that House of a Thousand Corpses is the better made film, but regardless, if you find one more entertaining than the other, then doesn't that make that one the better film? You know my thoughts on that. I feel that a movie's success is not based on how much money it makes or how many sequels it has, but it's based on how much it entertains the viewer. And House of a Thousand Corpses has so much to entertain the most die-hard horror fans. We've seen it all separately, and we can see it all together in this one movie. It's a horror fan's dream, made by a horror fan, and I feel you can really see Rob's passion for horror in House of a Thousand Corpses. So, with which of my points do you agree, and with which do you disagree? Comment below and let me know. Thanks for watching, guys, and listening to me ramble. Be kind. Subscribe.